Welcome to this bonus episode of Coconut Oil, Stardust, and Dope Vibes. I have been recording for audio purposes the psychic downloads that I've been receiving. Some of you have asked me to do that a long time ago, and I was like, let me finally catch up. Let me finally make that happen. So they'll be both written and audio. Either way, you can share, save, what have you. So this one is for November 25th. I was actually driving home, and this just lets you know, you don't have to be at an altar. You don't have to be in a stationary, seemingly spiritual space in order for yourself to receive downloads, to receive intuitive or divine information. So I'm driving, taking the kids to grab their food, and I had to just grab a receipt and start writing things down. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of what I wrote down and then the rest of the interpretation. So 2023 is going to see a lot of political upsets and unrest. There's a space where we have free will, but we're being asked, why aren't we making better decisions based on the stuff that has happened currently, the stuff that's happening currently, and the stuff that has happened before? We've forgotten the past, what we've gone through. The current generation feels like the previous generation is so far removed that when they went through, that the stuff that let me back up. So the current generation feels like the previous generation is like very far removed. It's like, oh, that was like so long ago. The reality is a lot of stuff that has happened is 40 years ago, 50 years ago, like some of our lifetimes. And I don't think the current generation is as in touch with certain things. And so there's like this missing thread. Even though the current generation has a lot of information at their fingertips, it's still like going over people's heads. So there's this space where a lot of history can really repeat itself. These cycles can continue when you don't rewrite the story, when you don't reframe the story, when you don't reshape the story. Just because you see the issue, it's not enough. There's not enough compassion. There's not enough empathy. And the three words that I wrote down was humanity, love, and humility. There is this space in 2023 where more people will turn to God. I wrote down more people will openly turn to God this year. The tides and the conversations are changing. I think the biggest thing that I wrote down with this is that churches have to change to God's agenda and not their own personal assignments of growth. The church will grow when you follow what God is asking you to do. I think there is a space for modernization where it comes to growing the church, but I think part of it is like the business of it. We've gotten too far away from God's agenda. So we have to really get back to the root of that. People are walking away from the church, but they're not walking away from God, which means that God needs to come back and be the focal point of the church. I also wrote down higher personal attunement. What is life about? The one that we least expect to lead will be leading. That message came through very clearly. Along with that, I wrote down karmic healing, soul codes, and the calling. We have this mindset that that there has to be like this call, this chosen one, in order to lead. But what we're also, it's that kind of mindset is making us miss who is actually popping up and starting to grab the attention of people. Like, it's making us miss that. And it's also making us miss the fact that we aren't putting ourselves in a space to groom and cultivate the right leadership, right? So because the mindset that puts these folks in leadership exists, and it hasn't been extinguished, the one that we least expect is going to come into leadership. And I don't think that's necessarily a great thing right now. But 2023 to 2025 is really this space of, it's this space of growing pains. And so there's going to be some hard knocks that we're going to get along the way. It's like a couple more bumps in the road until humanity collectively wakes up and is like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, let's move forward this way. We really have to pay attention. This calling, it's karmic healing. We have to get rid of these old soul codes. We're still operating off of what our soul and our DNA knew to be true because we had to operate in things a certain way. In order to cope, in order to adapt. Those ways don't exist anymore. And we are trying to fit, how do they say it, the square peg into the hole? We're trying to bring our old bodies into this new regime, and nothing old belongs in the new. Like, we need a whole new container. I heard a pastor talk about like the container and being able to fill the container, and for the container to actually expand. Like, so there's an expansion that's needed here, and we haven't properly gone through that expansion just yet. We know that we need it. Our souls are asking for it, but we haven't gone through that yet. So there's a calling that is upon us, but it's not like I received my calling for my purpose. I'm moving in that. It's this higher consciousness that's calling us. And there's a lot of deep healing that has to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of the intellectualizing and philosophy and stuff like that stuff is great, but that gives us surface. It tells us what needs to be changed, but not how it needs to be changed. So you need to be listening to intuitive guidance that is going to come forth in the form of like these downloads and things like that are going to teach us how to change. The intellectual part can't teach us how to change. It just tells us what needs to be changed. It says, be careful. So this movie that Denzel did, I think is called Fallen. And I can't remember when it was done, but I remember this movie where, these spirits would just kind of like it would just be touch or a look, and they would walk past and it would transfer from host to host just with people walking down the street. It says, spirits are moving like that now. A touch, a look. Humans are so open with no boundaries. They're just wide open and permeable. It doesn't take much for entities to move through you. Some you may encounter are so infiltrated that they are hosts. So some of the people that you're experiencing, being introduced to and meeting, like that's not really them. They're hosting these entities. So you got to really, really be careful and intuitively guide it. Like, look into people's eyes. I think it's interesting that we've had to wear masks for so long because the mask doesn't show the whole face. And then sometimes you've been talking to somebody so long with their mask and then they pull their mask down and you're like, oh, that's their whole face. But we've been able to see people's eyes and people are still missing it. The eyes are the window to the soul. Spirits have taken over. Those spirits have a calling to learn the protection of God's light. More people are openly turning to God this year. The tides in the conversation are changing. And like I said, the churches have to change to God's agenda and assignment, not their personal agendas pushed in the name of the church. So this is such a short download, but I think super powerful. And it's given a whole lot of information. And I think a lot of this stuff is going to start to unravel and come forth. So I want us to just kind of be on alert for some of these things coming up. Thanks for joining me with this bonus episode of Coconut Oil, Stardust, and Dope Vibes. I am your resident fairy godmother, Tamara Angela.